We're going to get started in a few minutes. We'll give it one more minute and we'll get started. Gary, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch screens now.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Carrie Shannard-Kunders, and I am the Executive Director of the South Dakota Board of Pharmacy, and I chair NASCA's Education Committee. I'll be hosting this afternoon's webinar along with NASCA's Kathy Keogh. Hopefully you've been reading the scrolling information while waiting for the webinar to start. This has information regarding our sponsors, a NASCA disclaimer, housekeeping items, and announcements. Today's webinars and all of our webinars throughout the year would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors. So thank you to our sponsors. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's webinar. ASAP PDMP standards, everything you need to know, and what's in the future. The PDMPs will have special interest in this topic as the reporting standards are changing based upon input put by PDMP leaders. I'm very pleased to introduce William Bill Lockwood as our extremely knowledgeable presenter who can shed light on this topic. Bill serves as the Executive Director of the American Society for Automation in Pharmacy, or ASAP, located in Blue Bell, Pennsylvania, an organization he was responsible for forming in 1988. ASAP represents companies that provide computer-based products and services to the pharmacy market. He's also the founder of Computer Talk Associates, Inc., also located in Blue Bell, which he founded in 1980. This company publishes Computer Talk for Pharmacists, a bi-monthly publication in print and digital on pharmacy-related technology topics. Bill holds a BS from Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey and an MBA from Indiana University in Bloomington. Bill established a fellowship in his name in the MBA program at Indiana University and a scholarship in the name of the Fairleigh Dickinson University School of Pharmacy and Health Sciences. He has been a guest lecturer at Fairleigh Dickinson University in the entrepreneurial program. He was also inducted into the President's Circle at Indiana University and the Pinnacle Society at Fairleigh Dickinson University in appreciation of his support over the years. He has authored numerous articles on the use of technology in pharmacy and has been a speaker and moderator at various pharmacy conferences over the years. Bill's the proud parents of 2 children, Maggie and Will, both graduates of Dartmouth College of Technology. They must be really smart like their daddy. Please, Bill, please enlighten us on ASAP. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Carrie. All right, if you go to the next slide. And we'll be off and running. All right. ASAP was formed in 87, 88, based in Bluebell, Pennsylvania. In case you're wondering where that is, it's a suburb of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. And we represent the technology companies. These are the companies that provide pharmacy management systems, integrated programs that address various areas of pharmacy to make the operation of pharmacy more efficient and also address the clinical component of pharmacies. ONC recognizes ASAP as a standards development organization, primarily because of the work we've done in the prescription drug monitoring program space. Next slide. Version 5.0. This is the latest version of the PDMP reporting standard. And it basically, the purpose is to improve the quality of the data and the scope of the data reported to PDMPs. That was the purpose of the upgrade to 5.0. We had 4 work group sessions from November through January, which included approximately 20 PDMP administrators plus other stakeholders, for a total of more than 40 people taking part in the discussion on which proposed changes we should incorporate into the new version of the standard. The proposed changes were a result of webinars and surveys with PDMPs to see what, in fact, they would like to see added to the standard, the changes made to the standard. So it was based on input from the PDMPs that triggered the calls we had to discuss what was going to be incorporated. 5.0 has 44 new data fields. And it's been 3 years since the last update to the standard. Now, I want to do a shout out for Kevin Borscher because he played a very major role in helping frame up 5.0. He was the person who did the webinars and the surveys, collating all that information and using that as the basis for the phone calls we had to discuss what was going to go in to the the update to the standard. You can order 5.0 by going to asapnet.org and clicking on publications in case you want to get a copy, in case you do not have a copy. Next slide. 2 standards. ASAP has 2 standards in the PDMP space. The one we're going to talk about today is 5.0, which includes error reporting and zero reporting. And the other one is the web services standard, which is used for bidirectional exchange with PDMPs for data request and response on a person of interest. I'll touch on that one later. Next slide. What we did with 5.0 is that we redefined the situational fields that were in 4.2b and earlier versions. We now have what we call optional fields and situational fields. A situational field is dependent on a linked field being required. For example, with just bear with me a second here. The PAT01, which is the patient fee segment, 01 is the ID qualifier or patient identifier. If that's required, which is the issuing jurisdiction, then PAT02 would be required, the actual qualifier type of ID, and PAT03 would be required, which is the actual ID of the patient. So PAT02 and PAT03 are situational based on the requirement that PAT01 be reported. Next slide. Let's take a look at what's changed segment by segment. The transaction header segment. Wait, back it up. The transactions header segment, the time zone should be reported in coordinated universal time. That was one of the changes that we made on how to report time. And that holds true for all the other segments where time is a required or optional data element. In the information source segment, we added software vendor name and phone number, both optional. Many of the PDMPs felt that this would be good information to have in case they have to make contact with the vendor that's sending in the data. Next slide. In the pharmacy information segment, we added new fields. We added, as you can see, dispenser type, independent chain, LTC pharmacy, hospital pharmacy, opioid treatment program, cannabis dispensary. And you can read the rest. And we also added mail order. Is the pharmacy submitting the data a mail order pharmacy? Yes or no? That particular data element was considered important information to have. Next slide. The patient information segment. We added a new qualifier for the code for PAT02, which is the type of ID that's required. And there we added a Medicaid recipient ID number. Again, this is something that the PDMPs felt would be important information to have. We added patient preferred or alias last name. We added patient preferred or alias first name. We added patient race, the patient's ethnic background. We added veterinary species code, and we added animal location code. Those were the new data elements or fields that we added to the patient information segment. And again, these fields were based on input we received from the PDMPs on what would be beneficial information to have reported, to have added to the reporting process. Next slide. Let's go to the dispensing record segment. Excuse me. Here we added in DSP07 the product ID qualifier. We added a code for cannabis. DSP12 transmission form of the prescription origin code. We added new codes. Order administered at prescriber location, dispense from a prescriber location, standing order protocol. Those were the new codes that we added to the transmission form of RX origin. We added new fields to capture the time the prescription was written. the time the prescription was filled, the time this prescription was actually sold, and discount card used if DSP 16, which is the payment type, is used, then discount card would have to be reported. Was a discount card used, yes or no? And over the years, there's been a lot of discussion on adding discount cards, and for some reason, it always got pushed aside. And this time, we finally got it incorporated. We also added the DEA schedule and state designation for the prescription, total quantity remaining of prescription, and the remaining drug dosage unit code of quantity remaining. So we're getting a little bit more granular with the data that's being reported. We also moved the last name or initials of the pharmacist filling the prescription from the AR segment to the dispense segment, and same for the first name or initials. Next line. In the prescriber segment, we added information that just fleshed out a little bit more about the actual prescriber. We added the prescriber address information, which is optional, as you can see. In the compound drug ingredient detail segment, we added the DEA schedule, state designation for each ingredient. Again, it's an optional data field. The PDMP can require it or ignore it. Next slide. Now, in the AIR, which is the additional information reporting segment, here we made a major change. We separated the reporting information on the person picking up the prescription versus the person dropping off the prescription if the person picking up or dropping off is different from the person for whom the prescription was written. And we also dropped code 01, which was the patient code, because it didn't apply. This particular data element of picking up, for example, is for somebody who's picking up the prescription other than the patient for which the prescription was written. So that was a major change. We segregated the picking up versus the dropping off. Other changes made in various segments, we changed field lengths. In many cases, we had to increase the length. We also were very specific on how to report address information. The source that we recommend using is the U.S. Postal Service Pub 28 or the ONC Project US Act. The address information is extremely important for matching on a query. And one more thing I want to mention and make sure everybody understands is that 5.0, as earlier versions, can be used for true real-time reporting, right? And also it can be used for reporting all prescriptions, and in fact is being used to report all prescriptions in Nebraska. Next slide. Now let's talk about the web services standard. We call it web service because it's sort of a web-based thing. This is used to access prescription drug monitoring program data on a person of interest. And one of its features is that a single pass can identify multiple states that the requester wants information from, and yet get a single response. In other words, you don't have to make a separate query for each state. One query, multiple states, one response to cover the findings from those multiple states. And the response gives a summary of the number of prescriptions, the pharmacies, and the prescribers based on the person that was queried. It also supports a pick list. And with the pick list, it also provides a reference number that can be used to capture the information on the specific person from the pick list. And it can return a no match response, which is important. It also gives access to risk scores, and Bamboo Health really developed this segment of the standard, so that you can see the risk scores and the morphine equivalent, that sort of information. I'm not sure how much usage this particular ASAP standard is having in the PDMP space, but it was designed based on input from, I think 17 or 18 prescription drug monitoring programs. So it wasn't something that ASAP cooked up along with Bamboo Health. There was input from a number of state prescription monitoring programs. Next slide. ASAP, some information on ASAP. ASAP holds an annual conference in January. We offer a discounted registration rate for PDMPs. The location of the conference in January of 2024 will be the Don Cesar in St. Pete Beach, Florida. Very nice property. And then we try to always have a PDMP topic on the program. And the January conference will include Kevin, who will provide an update on or an overview on 5.0. And he will also talk about the use of 5.0 for reporting all prescriptions. We work closely with Kevin to flesh out the ASAP standard to handle reporting all prescriptions. So this should facilitate other states considering going to all prescriptions. It gives ASAP standard a dual purpose, which which is nice. One thing I want to stress is that new codes or new fields cannot be added, nor can field lanes be changed without going through the ASAP change process. If we allow new codes, new fields to be added, field lanes changed, then we don't have a standard. So we do have a process for changing the standard, which is what we went through for 5.0. And one thing I ask is that when you put out your specs for, let's say, 5.0, do not include the field attributes, alphanumeric, that sort of thing, just the field name. Next. That concludes what I have to say about, 5.0 and the web services standard. I'll entertain questions at this point.
So if anybody has any questions, please let us put something in the chat box. The one thing I would mention that Bill neglected to add was that barring anything unforeseen, I'll be attending the ASAP meeting. And Bill has been generous enough to let me say a couple of words about NASCA to the attendees, because in looking at their past attendee list, at least a number of them probably don't know we exist. So it's a good opportunity to sort of tout NASCA.
Yeah, good point.
So Carrie, I don't see any questions. Can pose them in the chat box. Hopefully everybody is an expert. Actually, one question I had is you talked about the process for changing, and you alluded to the process you just went through, but if all of a sudden a bunch of states say that they want something added or taken away for that matter, what really is the process?
Well, they would have to contact me, and it would depend on what the individual wants, added or changed. If it's a minor change, I can approve it. But generally speaking, I don't like to do that because then we have variation on the standard, and the system vendors that programmed for the standard as it now stands would have to make a change for a specific state. And that I like to avoid. So what we generally speaking try to revisit the standard every 3 years or so to see what we have to add, what we have to change. And that was the process that we went through in November through to January to upgrade the standard to 5.0.
Okay, we actually have a couple of questions and somebody has raised their hand. So the first question is, have many states expressed interest in moving to ASAP 5.0 next year?
Well, that's an interesting question, because so far, I think only 2 or 3 states have ordered 5.0, which surprised me. A number of system vendors and chains ordered this new, the new version, but the states, there really hasn't been any major uptake from the states. And I think this is a result of many states, they have to get, legislation changed to change, the version. It baffles me because we're improving, we're providing a platform that's going to improve the data quality and the scope of the data that's being reported to allow prescription drug monitoring programs to do a better job. So but so far, it's been, I think 2 or 3 states have purchased. I believe a couple of states are trying to get the money to purchase the standard. It's only $300 for prescription drug monitoring programs.
Okay, the next question is, will address verification fall to the pharmacies?
Well, that depends. That's not an ASAP issue. I mean, we're recommending how address information should be reported. It's up to the prescription drug monitoring program to say, hey, that's the way we want this information reported. So it's the prescription drug monitoring program that determines and tells the reporting entities, namely the pharmacies, how address information should be reported.
Okay, the next question is, will there be a retirement of a previous version to move in the forward direction?
No, we don't really retire a standard. I mean, if a state is still using 4.1, for example, and it's working for them, they're happy with it, then fine, no problem. But so the answer to the question, no, we don't really retire the standard if it's being used.
Okay, I thought somebody raised their hand, but now I don't see it raised. So
I have a quick question, if you don't mind, Bill. So the process to change most PDMPs, all PDMPs, I think, have a vendor or someone. So does the vendor have to make the change as well as the PDMP? I guess maybe explain that. Maybe you did and I missed it, but how does that work?
Well, let's say you want to go to 5.0. Well, the vendor you're working with would have to support. You would tell your vendor, listen, we're going to 5.0. And they would have to make any kind of adjustments to their software to be able to handle the data elements and the field attributes in 5.0. So it's really the PDMP that controls this process, and the vendor has to be responsive.
Okay, the other question is, what is ASAP's plan to address telecommuting script documentation?
Well, that's up to the PDMPs. I mean, these prescriptions have to be reported to, if they're controlled substances, they have to be reported to the PDMP. And the PDMP would have to say, we want you to report these prescriptions using ASAP standard 5.0 or 4.2b or whatever, you know, the state is currently using. So it doesn't make any difference where the prescription originates. The state determines how it's going to be reported to them.
The next question is, does the new standard reflect the change in XDEA numbers?
Yeah, we took that out.
Okay, and time written of a prescription seems to be a very difficult data element to capture from the prescriber. What suggestion does ASAP have for capturing this information?
That is a data element that a state program has to decide the value of having that information. And if the state says, hey, we want the time the prescription was written reported to us, then the pharmacy has to make provision to report that information. So it's, again, it's what the state feels is going to be beneficial to their monitoring controlled substances being dispensed. It's the state's decision as to whether or not that particular data element is going to add value to the data. It's there because a couple of states said, hey, that's what we want. That's what we need. And I believe it also is important for when you capture all prescriptions to know the sequence of when things happened.
Okay. It's nice because now all the questions are flying. Will there be a field to collect whether the prescription is received from a telehealth visit or not?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's one of the data elements. It's one of the data elements or code that can be reported.
Okay. Can the new ASAP format allow dispensers to make buprenorphine prescriptions that are written specifically for pain, not MAT? This is noted on prescriptions, but not reported to PDMPs currently.
Oh, that falls outside the scope of ASAP. I mean, we develop the standard that says, here's the information that should be reported that the states require. And here's the information that's optional that the states can decide, I want this data element reported, or I want that data element reported. We can't go beyond that. I mean, we can't tell prescribers, for example.
Okay.
I know with, in addition to that, I know with the removal of the XDEA number, that's no longer required to be on prescriptions, at least from the South Dakota standpoint. So we may not even have that information, whether it's for pain or MAT.
Right.
Can you please discuss the new ASAP costs and who would be responsible for covering those costs? Would it be the state's vendor or the state itself?
Well, whoever purchased the document, I mean, I don't know the relationship between the state and its vendor, but the state itself should have the standard, because the state has to determine which data elements, which optional data elements the state feels would be important to have. So I would say the state has to order the standard. The vendor is going to, and when you talk about a vendor, you're talking about someone like Bamboo Health, I assume, or the pharmacy management system as the vendor. I'm not sure how you define vendor, but
Yeah.
they would have to order the standard as well. And quite a few system vendors have ordered it, and the new version.
And the cost for states is how much?
$300. That's it.
Okay.
That's a discount from what we normally charge system, ASAP members.
Okay.
Well, Bill, can I ask another question? So the cost per pharmacy, is that the same to implement that within their pharmacy management systems? And I know our legislature will ask if we're requiring this, what it would cost, sort of a fiscal note on the implementation.
At the pharmacy?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the majority of system vendors, the pharmacy management system companies, they have a maintenance fee. And my understanding is that maintenance fee covers any changes to state or federal regulations that impact the pharmacies. So it should be cost neutral to the actual pharmacies. So if you decide that you want to move to 5.0, the pharmacy system vendors then has to make sure that software is compliant with 5.0. And that cost to the pharmacies should be zero. I've never heard of any pharmacy saying, I've been charged because the system vendor had to move from this version to that version of the ASAP standard.
Okay, thank you.
It should be cost neutral to the pharmacies.
Okay, and then I think I know the answer, but I'll let you answer it. Is $300 for PDMPs a one-time cost or an annual subscription?
It's a one-time cost.
Okay, and then a sort of a related question regarding funding. And again, it's $300 for states. Will grant funds be able to cover the new ASAP version costs? I'm assuming the answer is yes.
I don't know. I would assume so, but I don't know.
I suppose if you build it into your budget, then you should be able to.
Yeah.
Um,
We're basically we're saying, and look, PDMPs, ASAP has been doing all this work over the years and developing the standard, upgrading the standard, We'd like to get some financial support out of this. And we feel that $300 shouldn't break anybody's bank. That's not the price that the system vendors and drug chains pay. They pay a higher price. So we're discounting the cost to the prescription drug monitoring programs.
Gotcha. All right. I do not see any more questions now. I'll give people one more minute. However, I will tell everybody that probably in the next 6 weeks, we'll be posting this presentation on our YouTube channel, which if you have not visited our YouTube channel, we have a number of past webinars on there for your viewing pleasure. And we'll tell you that we don't post them immediately because there should be a value to membership in NASCA. So if we just throw it out there, then there's, it's giving away, what we and our members are paying for as far as supporting the organization and the good work that we do. So again, I don't see any more questions, Carrie.
Okay. Well, then we will wrap this up and give people back a few minutes of their day. So Bill, this has been very informative for PDMPs and for all of us. Thank you for sharing your insight and expertise through this presentation. I'm sure the rest of our audience enjoyed it as much as I have. Kathy, if we have no questions left, once again, thank you to our speaker, Bill Lockwood. Thank you, Kathy Keogh. This has been excellent education for NASCA membership. as most of our webinars are. So on behalf of the National Association of State Controlled Substance Authorities, I would like to thank everyone who joined us today for this webinar. And thank you to our sponsors again for making it possible. We wish you a wonderful rest of your day and think spring.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Bill.